In this video, you'll see what looked like golf ball hailstones in Denver, Colorado, and you'll also see the 1951 Dorado, Kansas hailstorm. Stay tuned to this channel to get all the juicy facts and more. 1986 GOPALGANJ, Bangladesh hailstorm. People often underestimate just how deadly hailstorms can be. They can not only destroy property, but also claim lives. Cue April 14, 1986. A severe hailstorm hit the GOPALGANJ district in southern Bangladesh, causing damage to houses and crops. Not only that, but hundreds lost their lives, while thousands were injured in what seemed like a fusion of massive hailstones and massive tornadoes. The Bangladesh hailstorm was so big that it capsized several fishing boats as well, including a double-decker ferry boat with nearly 1,000 people on board. To add to that, the hailstorm drowned at least 50 boatmen, while many others went missing, becoming the most destructive hailstorm on record based on fatalities. The storm also severed telecommunication in remote areas and caused extensive damage to agriculture in the district. The damage caused by the storm was so severe that relief efforts were actually called. This hailstorm also affected other parts of Bangladesh, much like the Ganj district. 2018 Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas hailstorm. 2018 Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas recorded one of the most disastrous hailstorms on record. With hailstones measuring between 2 to 3 inches in diameter, this hailstorm hit the region of southeast Arlington the hardest. The size of these hailstones was likened to baseballs and destroyed about 25,000 vehicles and skyscraper buildings and causing power outages in about 345 homes. According to further reports, the hailstorm was widespread, hitting several cities including Coppell, Irving, Frisco, Arlington, and Carlton. This storm was so severe that it caused damages estimating at least $1 billion. Thankfully, the storm didn't last too long, but the damages caused led to a long line of insurance claims that continued for several months. People who captured these giant hailstones posted several pictures all over social media, freaking people out. As it turns out, this was the 5th biggest hailstorm to produce damages worth $1 billion, making it the most expensive hailstorm in Texas. 2004 Edmonton, Alberta hailstorm. What would later be referred to as one of the worst hailstorms in Canadian history happened in the state of Alberta. On July 11, 2004, a disastrous hailstorm leading to a massive storm that destroyed properties and buildings visited Edmonton, Alberta. This includes the West Edmonton Mall, with 30,000 people having to be evacuated from the flooded mall to the hills because of the heavy hailstorm. The storm caused at least tens of millions worth of damage to this famous mall. Not to talk of the other buildings and properties, though. With how ferocious this storm was, it was said to be very, very rare, and it was actually the first one in about 200 years to show this much damage. People who had actually witnessed this storm likened the hailstones to be the size of golf balls. It accumulated rapidly at 2.4 inches, falling from the sky, and in less than 30 minutes of this storm, the destructive flash floods were all over Edmonton. To add to that, at least 2 tornadoes were recorded during this storm. Though the city is not alien to hailstorms of this nature, they put the 2004 hailstorm on record as one of the biggest hailstorms in Canada. Thankfully, nobody was injured, but the damages were enough to cause the stress of the city. I think the best way to put it is how a newscaster put it: a god-awful storm. 1951 El Dorado, Kansas hailstorm. The Dorado, Kansas hailstorm, which took place in 1951, is one of the biggest on record. Notorious for happening between late spring and early summer, this hailstorm is actually no different from the others. This massive hailstorm hit the city of Selden, Dorado on June 23, 1951, with a record-breaking accumulation that's about 12 inches deep. Make no mistake, Dorado is no stranger to hailstorms, though. Sadly, this was one of the crazier in the state. Starting with a violent F4 tornado, the hailstorm accumulated at a top speed for about 84 minutes, causing road closures and damaging several vehicles. You'd think that this would be all, but sadly this hailstorm did more than just roadblocks. It damaged buildings, uprooted trees, and destroyed crops. The devastated crops and livestock were estimated to be $5 million worth of losses. When the storm was finally over, Selden town was covered in up to 18 inches of ice. This hailstorm remains the longest lasting and largest hailstorm in terms of the amount of precipitation that dropped in U.S. history. 2014 Brisbane, Australia hailstorm. One common thing Australia is known for is its hot weather, but in the wider region of Queensland is a city regularly visited with powerful storms. However, in November 27, 2014, the city of Brisbane witnessed a dangerous hailstorm like never. In what seemed like minutes, the city was buried in hailstones, causing severe damage to buildings, cars, and agriculture. While this hailstorm only lasted for about half an hour, it did have a wind speed of 88 miles, and the damage caused was enough to cause pain for the people in Brisbane. It was estimated to have caused in excess of 1.1 billion Australian dollars worth of damage. In fact, there were over 100,000 insurance claims and 642 power lines were destroyed, causing over 100,000 homes to be without power. Funnily enough though, that's not all. 2,000 houses suffered severe damage and they shut down 12 schools down for repair. Not to mention the governmental buildings that were damaged, but thankfully nobody was really killed, but about 40 people were seriously injured. The Brisbane hailstorm was described as the worst storm of a generation, and experts fear that a worse storm is about to befall Brisbane in a matter of decades. 1999 Sydney, Australia hailstorm. The 1999 Sydney, Australia hailstorm is one of the biggest hailstorms on record bar none. Causing damages worth 2.3 billion Australian dollars, this hailstorm received the tag of the costliest natural disaster in all of Australian insurance history. April 14, 1999, a severe hailstorm struck the city of Sydney, dropping about 500,000 tons of hailstones. Not only were vehicles destroyed, but buildings and businesses also felt the impact of the storm as hailstones the size of a cricket ball hit the city at 200 kilometers per hour. The storm hit 85 suburbs, causing major damage to 20,000 houses, including roofs, skylights, and windows. About 70,000 cars were damaged, according to the New South Wales Government Fire and Rescue, and about 2,000 emergency calls were made in the first 5 hours of the storm. Meanwhile, 1,092 incidents were reported in total. Lasting for about 5.5 hours, the hailstorm was reported as the biggest in the city. It was then classified as a supercell following the analysis of its erratic nature and attributes. Though the fatalities weren't as grave, about 50 people were injured and 1 life was lost. National Geographic described the storm as uncommon as it moved between land and sea. 2017 Denver, Colorado hailstorm. Several states have been home to rainstorms, and Colorado is one such state. The city of Denver, Colorado experienced another devastating hailstorm in May 2017. With almost incomprehensible destruction, this hailstorm produced enormous stones which struck at unusually high velocity, laying waste to any object that was in its way. The damages were so severe that over 200,000 insurance claims were made for vehicles and homes, leaving a total cost of $2.3 billion worth of damages. 20 to 30 cars were damaged, as well as multiple Lakewood dealerships. The storm also affected the Colorado Mills Mall. Reports stated that this hailstorm was by far the most devastating hailstorm in Colorado history, surpassing the famous 1990 hailstorm. One reason the damages were so intense was because of the timing of the hailstorm, as most people were driving while some parked their cars in unsheltered places. However devastating the Denver, Colorado hailstorm was, it's a rare occurrence that happens once in a few decades. Hopefully this gives us more time for the residents of Denver to prepare ahead for the next storm, because hailstorms in such areas are inevitable. Now it's time for the day's best pick. This one hailstorm was the biggest on record, and you couldn't have guessed what happened. 2010 Vivian, South Dakota hailstorm. In South Dakota, the city of Vivian may not exactly ring a bell, and unarguably so. Vivian is a small unincorporated community in South Dakota with only about 120 residents. While this community is small, it has witnessed some of the most devastating hailstorms on record. On July 23, 2010, a heavy hailstorm struck the city of Vivian. Not only was it recorded as one of the biggest hailstorms in the US, but it also held a record as the hailstorm that produced the nation's largest recognized hailstone of about 8 inches in diameter. That's not all though. This hailstone is also the nation's heaviest hailstone, weighing nearly 2 pounds. It was a late afternoon in Vivian when thunderstorms began threatening central Dakota. The conditions for this supercell formation were so quick that even weather forecasters were actually surprised. To add to that, the storm developed a wind of up to 80 miles an hour with occasional tornadoes. Luckily, the Weather Service representatives were present and witnessed the full force of the storm. With gigantic hailstones of up to 8.6 inches falling, these stones, which weighed about 1.94 pounds, destroyed vehicles and roofs of residents' homes. According to the National Weather Service, these hailstones may have shrunk significantly, and their original size could be twice as much as what fell from the sky. 1843 Midlands and East Anglia, England. Striking the Midlands and East Anglia on the 9th of August 1843, the storm was so massive that it was said to have spawned its own tornadoes. It lasted for several hours with an H7 intensity and a swath length of 225 kilometers. While hailstorms producing damaging hailstones in the UK are rare, this hailstorm was the exception. According to experts, the storm was a supercell storm with extremely destructive effects as it shattered roofs, destroyed glass, and flattened crops. About 25 centimeters of hailstones were even recorded. With such length, though, the hailstones were definitely large enough to wreak havoc on cars and buildings at the time. While there's no official measurements that were made to find out their size, the stones caused serious damage and accumulated up to 4.9 feet deep in both places, obstructing roadways and plying through roofs. The damage caused was so severe that a general hail insurance company, currently known as the Norwich Union, was formed to mitigate insurance claims for residents. Thunderstorms, tornadoes, and lightning strikes accompanied this hailstorm for a while. Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works. 1984 Munich, Germany hailstorm. For the biggest hailstorms on record, the 1984 Munich, Germany hailstorm tops the chart. It's often called the costliest hailstorm in the nation's history. Over on July 12, 1984, what seemed to be a dangerous hailstorm wreaked havoc on an area in Munich at 9 miles wide and 155 miles long. With the severity of the storm, its hailstones were even more damaging. Weighing as much as 300 grams, they fell all the way from Lake Constance to the border of Austria. These hailstones measured upwards of 2 inches in diameter and flew at speeds of 45 miles an hour. At the end of the hailstorm, about 70,000 homes were damaged, over 200,000 cars were seriously smashed, and 150 aircraft were also damaged. According to records, over 400 people were injured, and within 30 minutes of the storm, hailstones were 8 inches deep on the streets of Munich. The damages were actually so great that insurance companies incurred losses. Records say it's by far the greatest insurance industry loss in the history of Germany, as the damages totaled over $4 billion US. Some refer to this hailstorm as Europe's most expensive disaster in decades, and this disaster is only second to the 2013 hailstorm in the history of hailstorms in Germany. See you all next time!